The console wars have gone on for nearly 2.5 decades. Ever since Microsoft released their own console in the original Xbox, the debate was always, what is better, PlayStation or Xbox? With a little bit of Nintendo consoles sprinkled in there. The fans of each side defended their consoles with their blood, sweat, and tears, seemingly never giving in to the other side no matter what. But as the years went on, the debates have been few and far between. Everyone is comfortable with their favorite consoles, and with the inclusion of crossplay for almost every online game, there seems to be no reason for arguments over the superior console. But how did we get to where we are today, and what is the current state of the console wars? Well, that is what we're going to be exploring in this video. We'll start around the year 2000. Sony released their second generation console, rightfully naming it the PlayStation 2. As many people know, this was huge for Sony, as it is still currently the best-selling console of all time. This could be in part that it could play DVDs and was one of the cheapest options to be able to do so, and another part being that it didn't really have much competition at the time. Fast forward a year later, and Microsoft released their own console called the Xbox, and Nintendo released their new console called the GameCube. There was quite a fierce competition here, with Xbox and GameCube selling upwards of 20 million consoles each, but Sony had a huge advantage already that would not allow Microsoft and Nintendo to catch up in this generation. This led to a determined Microsoft to come out bigger and better than Sony. They released the Xbox 360 in 2005, a year before Sony released their PS3. Here is where we see the divide and the height of the console wars. Whether you were a believer in the UI for Xbox or the exclusives for the PS3, it seemed like everyone had a leg to stand on to defend their side of the console wars. With no crossplay and the hype of Call of Duty and Halo at the time, each side was trying to convince the other to switch over to their console to be able to play with each other. Xbox players convinced PlayStation players with their low price point, party chat capabilities, and superior controller, while PlayStation players countered with their free online services, built-in Wi-Fi, and Blu-ray player included. Neither side seemed to budge though, with the 360 and PS3 selling around 84 million and 87 million units respectively. There is one console, however, that also came out around the same time as the PS3. This is the Nintendo Wii. Whether you were a Wii Bowling Pro or rocked out on the guitar or drums in Rock Band, the Wii seemed to be universally loved. Nintendo outsold both Sony and Microsoft in this generation by about 15 million units, selling a total of around 101 million units. Although Nintendo had major success in outselling the PlayStation and Xbox, their spot at the top didn't carry into the next generation of consoles. The Wii U flopped and only sold a fraction of what the Wii did. Meanwhile, with the gap closing between the sales of Microsoft and Sony's consoles, their next generation had to be a hit to take over the market. Introducing the Xbox One and the PS4 in November of 2013, both rivaling consoles were finally released at the same time. Each console was revealed at E3, where the Microsoft boss at the time had a poor presentation of the Xbox One, and listed a bunch of features that rubbed people the wrong way, like forcing the Kinect and having more focus on online services rather than games. The PS4 looked like a flawless gem after that presentation, outdoing the Xbox with more processing power, lower price tag, and exclusive games. This really reflected in the sales, with the PS4 selling over twice as many units as the Xbox One did. The updated models with the Xbox One X and the PS4 Slim closed the gap a little bit, but Microsoft's initial mistakes with the Xbox One cost them a sizable market share percentage. Now we're finally at modern day consoles, where we can talk about what is actually going on with these companies. But first we'll go over how their consoles have sold so far. Nintendo regained their top spot again with the Nintendo Switch, selling around 141 million units to date. Sony is currently in second with the PS5 at around 59 million units sold, and Microsoft is in last with a measly 21 million units sold, being outsold by their first console, the original Xbox. But what really hurt Xbox in this race is that their supply of consoles have not been meeting the demand, with PlayStation being way more accessible in stores. There are also more and more people moving to PC, which also features Xbox content, so that may contribute to their dwindling console sales. However, these console wars recently have seemed like less of a competition of success and more of a competition of who can get more negative press. Only a few weeks ago, a PC game called Escape from Tarkov recently shocked and upset their community by putting a massive $250 paywall for their new features of PvE. This was after they said a $100 bundle will give all the DLCs to players for free, so you can see why many people got upset over their greed. Sony saw this news and thought that they could do better. They released a game called Helldivers 2 back in February, which was one of the most successful games in recent memory. With more and more people gaining interest in the game, Sony decided that they wanted all PC players to link their PlayStation Network accounts to their Steam accounts. They claimed that this was for security reasons, which seems shady to many due to their bad history of security issues.
Users of Sony's PlayStation Network have been greeted instead by error messages.
Now what's being called one of the largest digital data breaches in history.
That Sony suffered an external intrusion, which forced their online network to shut down.
So yeah, Sony says the personal information of about 75 million players may have been stolen.
Many regions also don't have PlayStation Network access, which would make the game inaccessible to a large group of players that purchase the game. The game got over 200,000 negative reviews seemingly overnight, which led to an apology from the developer's CEO and had Sony revoke the update that would require the account linking. Seeing all the press that Sony was getting, Microsoft now wanted to get some attention of their own. They followed the Helldivers news very shortly after with the news that they will be shutting down 4 game studios.
And that means that Xbox has now closed more studios than its released games this year. That is an embarrassing statistic. They are more likely to close a studio than they are to release a game at the moment.
Among these studios was Tango Gameworks, which was behind Hi-Fi Rush, one of the most positively reviewed games made by Xbox in several years. Obviously, this left a sour taste in a lot of gamers' mouths. Why would they shut down a studio that made such a great game recently? The reasoning was listed in this Bloomberg article. It says that executives felt stretched too thin trying to manage every team. The studios had just released games and needed to staff up to be able to start work on new ones, and more cuts will occur at an individual level with staff offered severance packages within Bethesda proper. They also mentioned that leaders across these studios felt understaffed and decided to close down these studios to free up resources elsewhere. One day after this announcement, Microsoft announced that they needed more smaller games like Hi-Fi Rush, which was made by one of the studios that they decided to shut down. At this point, I personally have no idea if these gaming giants really know what they're doing anymore. Instead of fighting to be the best in the business, they seem to be fighting to dig the deepest hole of their graves. And I didn't even mention all the layoffs that both Sony and Microsoft announced somewhat recently. As for Nintendo, the only recent thing I've found for them recently is the new Paper Mario drama where everyone's pre-orders had been getting cancelled for unknown reasons. Other than that, everyone seems to be just anticipating when their next console will get released. Overall, I believe that the consoles appear to be declining fast, and I think that most people should be transitioning to PC whenever they get the chance to. PC just has more accessibility to games, and appears to be the safer option when looking at the state of whatever is left in the console wars. If I were to choose my own console, I would probably just choose Nintendo's consoles, since PC seems to have less accessibility to their games than those released for the Xbox and PlayStation. But let me know what your thoughts are on this situation, and where you think the best place for gamers is currently. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and until next time, I'm out.